Welcome back to The Truth with Trinity, and I am your host, Trinity. And if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I wanted to shout out a warm welcome to you. And I wanted to jump right into the topic of discussion for this podcast episode, and that is white people who portray black figures, but it's a big issue when black people portray white figures. So I wanted to give a couple of examples and um, perhaps the reasoning behind it, hypothetically speaking. Okay, so I wanted to start out with Halle Bailey. Okay, so I say it again, Halle Bailey. You know, she's a beautiful young black woman who is doing the Little Mermaid. Okay, she is portraying, which is the original um, uh, cast as a redheaded Caucasian white girl as a mermaid. Okay, so there's this big controversy about it. I've read some of um, the comments. YouTube. A lot of Caucasian women and men are saying, hey, I don't want my children watching this or have a problem with it. The original Little Mermaid is of Swedish descent, red hair, what's going on here, um, situation. And to me, what that symbolizes, underhandedly, is that they have a problem with a black woman being portrayed as a princess when in actuality we're the original princesses. Those are made up princesses, Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and Snow White. But when you look at, for example, even Egyptians, those are the first black queens and kings, okay? And then, speaking, with, black men, they don't want them portrayed as superheroes. So there was a big old fiasco about the Black Panther. And, to me, that symbolizes that they don't want anyone to see a black man, saving the world, being powerful, um, being alpha male, saving, helping people. And I find that very disturbing because throughout time, you know, Caucasians have been portraying, Egyptians. What was her name? Elizabeth. She's I think her name is Elizabeth Taylor, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she's portraying Cleopatra. Her skin is porcelain, and Cleopatra is a black woman. Okay, and then even from what's that called? It's a Western show, and I forgot what it's called, but one of the characters' name was Adam Cartwright. It was a famous Western show. I'm trying to think of the name of it. So, but anywho, I have a little respect for him because he received backlash for, speaking out about, white people playing Indians. I like to call them Native Americans because that's who they are, Native Americans. Um, because Indians are from India. But anywho, he received backlash because he says, why, pay white actors to put, some tan paint on and refuse to pay Native Americans to play those roles. So you have white people portraying, other people and feel rightfully so to feel well within their rights to do so with no backlash from anyone. But the minute someone that is non-white plays a character like, for example, even Spider-Man, that's originally a a white character, a white actor, plays that part, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. But then there's a black Spider-Man. There's all sorts of backlash about that, and it's like, that's quite disturbing, considering the fact that Caucasians have a history of exploiting other people's heritages and traditions and customs and putting their white face on it and taking it in as their own and absorbing it. Okay, and they go so far as to lie to other people and also to lie to themselves and their own children, because you'll have white people arguing you up and down that black people are, were not Egyptians back in the day. And when you watch PBS and you watch the educational channels, you'll see a light, narrow-nosed pharaoh, when in actuality they were broad-nosed and black people, And I think that a lot of white people have a problem with admitting that blacks were Egyptians and Egyptians were blacks, especially back in those times. We're talking about, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago, because that would admit that black people come from greatness. And that's the last thing that a lot of white people want to do, is say, hey, you come from greatness. And so that would kill the myth that black people are inferior. So they, a lot of them don't want any images cast out into the media, TV, that black people are anything other than just being inferior, clowns, comedians, great hoppers, leapers, football players, runners. Black women are great dancers, booty shakers. Yes, that's all we are, but nothing about ruling. Nothing about our history of our great civilization that once was. And if it was so insignificant, as they say, they are proud to, cast, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mary, Queen of Scots, King George, King Henry the Eighth, Seventh. The list could go on. So basically, history is very important. Okay. And, it was said that Napoleon, and Napoleon is like a general or something, right? A French revolutionary general. And, he had his troops. So he was born in 1769. He died in 1821. But it's said that in between that time that he lived, he, went to Africa and he blew off the noses of the Sphinx. The Sphinx, those are big, statues of the pharaohs, and some say that he did that, out of the hatred of the broad nose of those pharaohs, and that's symbolizing, black people, And so then they argue now that black people were not Egyptian. So, to really wrap it up is, I think that needs to stop in our country, because, how dare, it be accepted for white people to continue to play roles of Cleopatra, okay, and all sorts of black figures, and put a white actor or actress playing them. Okay, and then it's such a big ordeal for beautiful actresses like Halle Bailey and whoever played, the Black Spiderman, and so it's such a big ordeal. And before it becomes such a big ordeal, it needs to stop. The white facing needs to stop, because Elizabeth Taylor does not resemble Cleopatra, and like I said, when you watch PBS and those educational, segments, they'll, they have little clay statues and stuff, and they're whitewashing those too, and it's not to say that there were not any light-skinned, black people back then, but just to say that they're not black, once again, that's them saying, hey, there's no greatness in black people. That's their way of saying that, like, there's no such thing, that's a lie. And then on top of that, that black women, can't portray a princess. So that's, once again, the underhanded undertones of racism that still continue in this country, because black women can be princesses, and with the proper education and refinement, that we shall be. Okay, and black men, they can lead and they can be superheroes, and superheroes are, I mean, fictitious anyway, but they still symbolize a man, most of the time, especially like Superman. There can be a black Superman. I don't see why not, you know. But anywho, that pretty much wraps up this segment. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I mean, let me know what you think. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can reach me at thetruthwithtrinity@gmail.com. It's been a pleasure. Peace and blessings.